Welcome to the Westwood Planning Board meeting. I'm Dave Atkins, and I'll be chairing this meeting. All meetings are recorded by Westwood Media Center. If there's anyone else that would like to record this meeting, please identify yourself so the audience is aware. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phone ringers. The agenda is available at the back of the room. The meeting will follow the order on the agenda. The meeting will be civil, and all people will be treated respectfully. The format of the meeting will be when an item is called, the applicant will come forward to the podium to present their application to the board. The board will proceed to staff comments, then board members will ask questions of the applicant, and then the public will be given an opportunity to comment. When it is time for the public comment period, the chairman will call those wishing to speak to the podium. Once at the podium, please identify yourself by stating your name and address for the record. And please come up to the podium and use the microphone so that we can record everything for the Westwood Media Center. All comments and questions shall be directed through the chair. All people will be given the opportunity to speak, but in the interest of time and fairness, repetitive or off-topic comments may be cut short. First, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
No changes to the agenda, then we will proceed to the first item on the agenda, which is Lifetime Fitness, 44 Harvard Street. Request to add healthcare office on the second floor.
Good evening. Is mic on?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to Abby and your staff, as always, for your help. I'm Brian Dugdale from Goulson & Stores, and tonight I'm here on behalf of Lifetime Fitness, which is the owner and operator of an approximately 125,000 square foot health and fitness facility, which currently exists at the University Station project. Scott Ferguson, who's the development manager at Lifetime Fitness, is also here with us tonight. Happy to answer any questions. So tonight we're here for what we're calling an amendment, but it's really just a technical minor modification to the facility's existing project development review, or PDR approval, which was issued by this board under the University Avenue Mixed-Use District regulations under the town zoning bylaw back in 2013. So today, if you go to the facility and you go up to the second floor, you'll find an area, it's about 2,800 square feet, give or take, that's dedicated to a range of uses that are classified as Office of Healthcare Professional. So today, the things that are there, for example, are physical therapy, chiropractic services, things of that nature. So the application and the approval back in 2013 contemplated these uses, but they did not specify that there would also be medical uses, specifically primary and preventative medical care uses. So the use that we're here to clarify tonight that we'd like to include within that space, it's existing space, already fit out space with no structural or other changes that are proposed, no physical changes whatsoever, would be for that medical use. So it's designed to be, again, a preventative and primary care. So, you know, for example, the type of person who might be likely to use it would be someone like me, right? 3 kids and 8 years at a desk job. I try to be a gym hero, hurt myself, my knee hurts. There's the doctor right there waiting for me, right there in the facility. So it's not emergency care. There's going to be no emergency response. Someone gets hurt and really needs to see someone for emergency care, they're going to dial 911. The medications on site and medical equipment is really minimal, so no EKG machines or anything like that. It's really designed to complement the existing health facility uses, fitness facility uses. So again, the actual, you can see a little bit there, it's kind of on the left side of the plan up there. It's about 2,800 square feet already fit out for these types of uses. So Lifetime respectfully requests this board's approval to just technically amend their PDR approval so that this is very clearly allowed. The use is allowed as of right in this area. There's not as if we need any sort of zoning relief. And it furthers the whole entire purpose of the University Avenue Mixed-Use District, which is complementary uses. You're going to have less cars because you're going to have somebody that needs to see a doctor that's going to be already at University Station in the fitness center or otherwise that can just see their doctor there. And again, it meets all the design and performance standard, which were carefully reviewed back in 2013. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions that the board might have.
Thank you. Abby, do you have any staff comments or comments from?
No other comments. The fire department provided some questions that the applicant has answered. They were asking about if there would be emergency response, but we know that that's not the case here. One thing I would add is parking. Usually when you have a proposal for a change of use, you double check the parking. In this zoning district, there is not a clear calculation. It's at the board's discretion, at your determination that there's sufficient parking. And the original approval called for over 500 parking spaces, 563, and I don't think this would have an impact on that parking spaces.
Yeah, I was just wondering, as far as the management of what type of, is it a lifetime practice, or is it a different type of hospital? Like, what is it associated with?
Scott, I'm going to defer to you on that one, but.
You want me to come up there?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Okay, sure. So typically I'm Scott Ferguson with Lifetime Fitness Development Managers. Typically we, it's kind of lease the space to a physician. So, I'm not quite sure the ins and outs of, their employment, whether
So
they're
the
leasing the
affiliation
space
could
or.
vary.
What's that?
The affiliation could vary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Just depending on the local laws
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's fine.
licensing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious.
You don't have a tenant currently?
Not yet, no.
Would this be a doctor, a PA? Would there be a nurse? Kind of what kind of, how many people?
Well, it'd be like your primary care doctor, not unlike, like a Minute Clinic in a Walgreens or a Target. But the idea is that the services offered kind of complement the existing nutrition and, healthy way of life kind of activities. So.
Will they be able to handle emergency triage?
No, they will be directed to call 911.
I'm curious, do other Lifetime centers have this? Is this kind of a thing that you're doing
Yeah,
across the country?
a larger one just opened not too long ago in Chestnut Hill, where there's a Lifetime preventative care office that's about 9,000 square feet, much bigger than this one.
Any other questions?
Just curious, what about the chiropractic and the physical therapy? Are they going to remain in that area?
Yep. It'll still be, we just want to expand the services. That's all.
Okay.
And the current PDR, I think, only has chiropractic care and physical therapy.
Are,
Well, when I first looked at it, I said, why even bothering to come to us for such a minor change? And I did have to look very carefully, and our decision said we allow the professional health services, but the doctor comes under the personal. We allow personal, but we don't allow, we didn't mention professional, and that's where the doctor is. So it's very minor, it seems, but.
Yeah, we're just crossing I's and dotting T's here.
In the parking lot itself, has that ever come anywhere close to being filled ever?
I mean, it gets pretty full, but I've never heard of any complaints from members or staff.
Are there any comments from the public? Well, we have a draft motion here.
Yep.
A lengthy one.
Someone would like to offer that?
We need to get it all in?
Yes, that would be recommended.
All right, buckle up, folks. Make a motion that we approve section 9.7.12.2.2 of the Westwood zoning bylaw and vote to amend the project development review decision issued by the planning board on December 17, 2013 in connection with the application for PDR amendment, the applicant, submitted by Lifetime Fitness Incorporated, the proponent, on August 28, 2017, to add primary and preventative care, the proposed use, to the existing healthcare office at the proponent's facility located in Development Area C on the plan entitled University Avenue Mixed Use District Modified Master Development Plan, prepared by Tetra Tech, last revised November 22nd, 2016, the Master Development Plan. Number 2, in connection with the issuance of such PDR amendment, make the following findings with respect to the proposed use. Subsection 1, the proposed use material conforms to the Master Development Plan and supporting documents on file with the town clerk. Subsection 2, any previously developed portion of the University Avenue mixed-use development project has not resulted in material adverse impacts that have caused a condition that does not comply with the applicable regulatory requirements or, in the opinion of the planning board, a substantial detrimental to the public health or safety or the environment. 3, the proposed use does not pose a new material adverse impacts or materially, let me restart that. The proposed use does not pose new material adverse impacts or materially exacerbated existing adverse impacts to any adjacent property or in the proximate neighborhood that have not already been addressed through mitigation required by the development agreement by and between the town of Westwood and Westwood Marketplace Holdings LLC, dated as of May 7, 2013, as the same may be amended from time to time. 5, the proposed use results in net fiscal benefits to the town and the proponent has adequately mitigated any adverse fiscal impact. Number 5, the proposed use complies with the standards and requirements set forth in section 9.7 of the Westwood zoning bylaw, included but not limited to the performance and design standards set forth in section 9.7.11 and section 6, all waivers from the University Avenue mixed-use rules and regulations requested in the application and approved hereby are A, in the public interest or related to information that is not relevant to the amendment or would be duplicative of information previously provided in connection with the UAMUD project or prior phases thereof, and B, consistent with the intention and purpose of said rules and regulations and the Westwood zoning bylaw.
Second that.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. It passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda, Westwood Estates definitive subdivision amendment, Thompson Avenue public hearing. Modification request to amend the approved plan that includes trees planted every 30 feet on both sides of the street.
Hi, I'm Paul Trider, representing CS Westview LLC, the developer of the subdivision. We're here to request a plan, a modification to the subdivision plan that required, the original plan required basically tree plantings about every 30 feet around the subdivision along the street. About a month and a half to 2 months ago, we sat down with Abigail to start the process of getting the street accepted. And we discovered that we had not planted the trees. So our original thought was, well, let's just go plant the trees. We also discovered that the trees are not on property that we owned any longer. The subdivision plan required, I guess the bylaws back then required plantings 12 feet off the sidewalk, which is in the lots that we don't own any longer. So we said, well, let's sit down and we'll talk with the lot owners. So we sent the lot owners a letter telling them what we were trying to do as far as get the street accepted, and the original subdivision plan required X amount of trees planted in the front of their lots. To nobody's surprise, you know, we didn't get a whole lot of acceptance of where the trees were. You know, in some instances, the trees were shown in people's driveways. In other instances, they're shown on top of people's retaining walls that were already required. This plan came about when there were no lots, home lot layouts. So it really was just a basic kind of tree layout. So we're kind of stuck in a situation where the lot owners would like to, and us would like the street accepted. We're trying to come up with an alternative plan that works for everybody involved. It really was a big oops on our part as far as having the trees in people's lots before the lots were developed was really the flaw in where this happened. So in any event, we sat down with Abigail after we talked to everybody, and we've come up with an alternative plan that we're trying to seek approval on. And that really is about, this original plan had 60 trees that were required to be planted. Along the way, some of the lot owners planted trees, the developer of the house lots planted trees, and I've highlighted kind of in yellow, that's the detention basin where the majority of the trees are. There's about 15 trees there. Lot 23 on the other page has about 5 trees that they've planted along their lot line. Lot 21's got 3 trees that they've kind of lined their driveway with, and there's 2 other trees in the other lots right in the corner up near mailboxes, so to speak. That's about 25 trees where we stand today. Our proposal to Abigail was, you know, we could either figure out a way to plant 60 trees on here, which I'm not sure we have that buy-in quite yet, or we've proposed, you know, there's 25 trees there. We were supposed to plant 60. We were willing to fund a difference between that for I'd call it a tree fund that could either be planted here at this subdivision, or I don't know the logistics on how a town, you know, controlled tree fund may or may not work, or it could be a homeowner's tree fund, but we're trying to come up with a solution that works for everyone. In a lot of cases, we can't physically plant the 60 trees where they're supposed to be planted because of various driveways or other, you know, improvements. There's also drainage and easements, and also people's own irrigation systems that they've done. So, and there's quite honestly, some people just want the space in their front yard to be a soccer, you know, so their kids can play soccer, and the trees tend to get in the way. So we're here to see if we could come up with an alternative tree plan that may work for everybody. We've sat down and met with the lot owners on a separate to talk about this, as well as to talk about homeowners' obligations and logistics and setting that up. And you know, we're all we're working together on this. We're not trying to get out of planting trees. We're not trying to. It was kind of a design flaw, and the bylaws required something that we couldn't do at the time. So that's kind of where we stand. If you see, well, and you can see the alternate plan that's there, you know, if you guys have any questions, I'll be.
Thank you. Abby, did you have anything from?
No comments at this time.
I'm sorry.
I'm one of the homeowners. If anyone would like to hear, well, my husband and my opinion.
I think usually we kind of have the board ask questions, but
Okay,
we'll
great.
definitely come back to you.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear what you have to say. I have a few questions. One has to do with, you had mentioned that you went to some homeowners who, because obviously, did you go to every house that you wanted to do it?
We sent letters to every house.
And who responded? Like, what was,
I've got a list there. About 5 to 6 of the residents responded.
and of those 5 or 6, what did they say?
Well, a lot of them are here, so we'll hear from them. A lot of them sent emails that I didn't hear from. I traded emails or talked to everybody, and it varied from, no way, I don't want trees. It went from, it would have been nice if you told us that you were going to do these trees before we did our own landscaping.
Sure, yeah.
Some people, you know, we suggested a tree type just to get things rolling, and lot owners didn't want that tree, maybe want that tree type.
And then
some
so you said you sent them out and you got feedback from 5 or 6, and then so how many were no responders?
I didn't hear from one, but I've either emailed or spoke to everybody.
So it's only one that you haven't heard from?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I did get an email from them, the ones
Good.
I didn't hear from. I didn't
Yeah,
change.
what did they say? Are they in the room here?
No, I don't see them
Okay.
here.
What did they say?
They wanted to, everybody wants to get the street accepted, but not everybody wants the trees exactly where the trees are.
Got it.
And in some instances, it's impossible to put 4 trees where they're out in front of someone's lot because of a retaining wall or a driveway.
So within that 12, the
About
12-foot requirement?
every 12 feet, I think, is where.
Oh, no, I mean from the street.
So off the sidewalk, at about, I think it's 12 feet into the lots is where the subdivision has the
Got it.
trees.
Yeah, because is there any way to, because I can understand somebody not wanting the trees so close to the house or what have you. Do we ever make waivers within that 12-foot from the street? And I wonder if a homeowner would be happier if it was,
I mean, usually the subdivision plans are approved long before the lots are even created or sold.
Yeah.
So it's usually determined earlier on. But as the applicant said, our old regulations used to have the tree plantings outside of the right-of-way on the other side of the sidewalk. We've since updated our regulations in 2016 and have now require a larger tree lawn area, and then also requiring the trees to be within the public right-of-way. That way, it would be planted before the lots are sold, and then once accepted, the town would then maintain it as we go forward. But that's not what happened here.
yeah, because I would imagine that there's going to be a mix of some residents who are interested in this and some who are not.
Maybe,
Well, a little history here. Yeah, this is a real special case because this was a subdivision from years and years ago,
Yeah, 1965.
1965. And then it came before the planning, it never got built, except the streets got put in, I think, but nothing was
Paper
done.
streets, yeah.
Paper streets. And the lots were all laid out from that year, and then they came and they decided they wanted to build it. And the problem was that the paper streets were 40-foot right away, and we have much wider street rights away now. So there was no compatibility between the current street layout and this 40-foot layout, and so things just wouldn't fit. So in this case, and it did change, and I went through 2 iterations on how everything was going to go on, and pointing out they're going to be swales, and then it came back, the Conservation Commission didn't like it, so now we have a big detention basin. And So it ended up being like an old street where you have 2 feet between the edge of the pavement of the street and the sidewalks. And we've long ago concluded that's not a place to place a tree. They just don't survive very well there. So we wanted them on the other side of the sidewalk. But again, that was already on the people's property. So we did the unusual condition that they be put on the people's property, which is dangerous right away, because then people can come out right after they've been planted and cut them down if they wanted to. And we've had people actually do that sometimes when they are even on town property. So, so this is a different case, and that's why there's no question of what we normally waive here. This whole situation is entirely different from what we normally do. So I think that those people that are happy with trees on their property, they've already been all planted.
In some instances, yes.
Okay. So you,
These trees on here have all been planted that I'm showing you, yes.
so there are a few left to be planted, but you're in agreement with the residents on planting those?
Well, we'd like to work something out where we could get the street accepted and keep the process moving, because that's basically the next planning board meeting, or we miss a whole nother cycle.
Right. But all the trees that are going to be planted, are they planted now, or?
Well, right now, the ones that are planted, yes. We're proposing if there's a need for more trees, we'd be willing to fund that up to the
Right.
to the 60 trees that we.
All right, so we worked out the amount of money for the remaining trees, and then it's between you and the remaining homeowners that have asked for trees and haven't received them yet, to go ahead and plant them.
Yeah, well, we could work something out with the homeowners association. I don't know how to. I don't want to get them feuding amongst themselves either. I mean, not that you guys don't all love each other, but you know, we're trying to find a way that works for everybody and keeps the process moving.
Right. I mean, I'm satisfied with the amount of money paid for trees that haven't been planted. But if there are any neighbors that still want trees, they should speak up now so they can get those trees. Otherwise, after that point, you wouldn't be on any
Mike Terry, counsel for the corporation. So the way we did the math, it works out.
Do you want to just use the mic so that they can get you
It
on?
works out to $22,913. I think what I propose is we'll set up the fund to the extent that the residents want trees on their lots, they could be funded through that fund, and then whatever's left over, the town could use wherever they would wish to implement additional trees or landscape.
That's a little too complicated.
Right, right.
It shouldn't be, but
Right.
We want that amount of money. It's all that is to be going to trees
So you,
elsewhere in town.
all right, so you want a fund distinct, that's just for the town's purposes,
Yeah.
and these guys, will take care of them
Yeah.
separately.
Correct.
Okay, I think we can do that.
But I think I would also throw on the table to also be flexible as far as the location. So if like the way I feel about it is that if a resident wants a certain tree in a certain location, I think even within that 12-foot requirement from the street, I think I would like to be a little bit flexible about that in this situation.
I think they've already done that in a lot of cases.
Well, we're
As
working
far as spacing.
with the residents
Yeah.
now, with the lot owners now. That want.
All right.
Okay.
So I just want to make it clear that you may want to plant a few more trees for the neighbors. There's no guarantee that's going to happen with our decision here. Our decision just says you're going to pay that amount of money, and that will go for trees on public roads in town. It won't be here because they would have to be planted again on private property, and the town's not going to do that.
But the values, that 22,000 is based on the difference between what is planted in the neighborhood and what was approved.
Right.
So if there's additional that are planted, then that would decrease that 22,000.
Right,
But
but
we
it,
can't.
right, I think
no,
the
we have to
planning
make a
board would
decision
need to know that
tonight.
now.
We have to make a
Exactly,
decision
exactly.
tonight. So we have to settle upon an amount of money and assume that there will be no trees planted from, that money is going into the town fund. No trees will be planted on this subdivision based upon that amount of money. If they work out anything with individual homeowners, now or any time, to plant more trees, then you can do that.
Set aside 10 for the neighborhood.
Can we, we haven't really sat down with all the neighbors to get a definitive idea. Some of them want some trees, some of them don't want trees. You know, originally the trees are all supposed to be in the front of their yards. If people come back to us and say they want 3 in the backyard and they're supposed to have 4 in the front yard, I don't know how you guys want that addressed.
If there are no, it might be a good time to hear from the residents.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So if people could come to the podium in order and tell us your thoughts.
State your name.
State your name, your address.
Just use the microphone so that we can, folks at home can hear.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Menendez. I think I'm what 19, Kev? 21. 21, sorry. 49 Thompson Ave. So I am now part of the elected HOA for the organization, but I don't want to speak on behalf of every individual's lot. But I will say from my husband and my perspective, we just heard about this about 5 or 6 weeks ago. We've owned the home for over 3 years. We have personally invested a lot into landscaping and trees and everything into our own yard. Some of which conflict with their plans, some of which don't. Regardless, as you've heard, they are intrusive on our land and our yard and the purpose of our home. So we are happy to plant as many trees as they would like to in our yard. We just can't put them exactly where they'd like them, but we actually would like to plant those trees in our yard. And I know that some of our other neighbors would as well, just not exactly where they have plotted them. So I would ask that we have a fund through our HOA that we can either align to ourselves based on the number of trees plotted here for each homeowner, or we use as the HOA as a fund to determine, because we now have this water basin and everything else to manage, that we can use collectively together. So I would ask that we actually keep it in the neighborhood, because it is a bare neighborhood, some of it, and there's electrical pieces and everything that still need to be covered, and it could look much better than it currently does. And I think that would be a benefit to the town overall as well. So that would be my 2 cents. Anything else, Kevin? Maybe. Come on up. Okay.
Who else would like to come on down?
Hi, I'm Devgan. I'm the owner of lot 1787 Thompson Avenue. I want to second what Julie said. I want it to be noted that while we were informed that this was a situation, there has not yet been any discussion with any of the homeowners about any alternatives that may be available to us. Number 2, again, I want to second what Julie said, in that the homeowners are desirous of coming up with a solution where if lot owners want the trees, we need to have the flexibility of where, how, and which type of trees perhaps that we would want on our lots. Now these requirements would vary by different homeowners, but we would like to have the opportunity to have that discussion. And we ask that that opportunity be afforded to us.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I was wondering, is there anybody opposed, have a negative view of the plantings? It sounds like it's the location and the type.
Like located where it's currently marked?
Yeah, it says, yeah, so is there anything critical other than the location?
That's where they were planted now.
And the type.
And the type, yeah.
That's where the trees.
Abby, do we have any flexibility in the type and the location?
Yes. In your original approval, it didn't specify the tree species. It just kind of has general locations and says to be planted every 30 feet.
My question is, what if we went to the backyard?
Not really, right.
No, we have
The
no
intent is
flexibility.
usually to be along the street line.
Got it.
for the trees.
So our hands are tied in that respect.
Well, that's kind of the general purpose of the trees. I did hear from one resident came to the office. It was, I think, the owner of Lot 18 was opposed to any tree plantings. So that is the lot, let me see, I think one
Is an 18
over.
the unbuildable lot?
No, okay, then it wasn't 18, it was,
Am I wrong about that?
No, you're correct.
Okay.
All right, so we want to
All right.
settle this tonight.
Who's-
Yes.
So you're proposing you plant 10 more trees and then pay us for 15?
Yeah, so I think that this is Kevin Shalinski. I think the part of the question here is the fund or how the fund is calculated. So right now they've counted about 25 trees that have been funded by the residents, by the current owners, and that would leave, I guess, another 35 to go, right, to be planted. The 25 that have gone in, we could go back and kind of estimate the cost of putting those 25 in and kind of extrapolate that out. But I think what we're debating here is what is the value of planting another 25 trees and where does that fund go? In the opinion of our homeowners, what we'd like to do is determine, understand how he's calculating the $22,000, and then reconcile that with what we've invested in planting our own trees thus far, and determine if that's a fair value to apply to the per tree planting that would remain for the additional 35 for the HOA. Recognizing that some of the lots wouldn't necessarily have any trees and others might take 3, 4, 5 more per lot. And in the case of ours, we put in 4. Our intent is to put in 4 or 5 more, and we've already discussed this with our landscaper, the company that's done the landscaping for us, and kind of have an estimate to do that. But it may or may not be complementary with what they've estimated.
And I don't know if I can speak from out of the podium, but the original landscaper, most of us have all fired because of the inadequacy of the services and quality of the plants provided. So when I say the majority, I mean almost all of us. So we do all use a new person for the last 2 years that we all are using. So I would actually ask that individual for the quote, because we will be transferring probably everything over from the HOA over to him now that we have just transferred the HOA, because his quality and services are adequate.
All right, I have a question for the developer. Of the 25 trees that have been planted, did you yourself plant those trees, or that includes what the homeowners did themselves?
No, 15 of them were planted by the developer of the homes.
15 were developed by the
Of
developer?
the home. We developed the street,
Okay.
the home developer.
But of the 25, 15?
We have not planted any trees,
You haven't planted any trees?
none.
I know, I planted.
Just come to the podium, please. Thank you. We got to get this all recorded.
My name's EJ Tadeusz, and I'm at 44 Thompson. I think that's lot 23. I'm with Mr. Shalinski as well. We've put some money into our own landscaping. We have planted trees, so I don't know what, where that goes to at this point in terms of what they've planted and what, private residents have planted, but I can tell you I've planted 5 trees myself. So just off that right there.
Okay.
But
That's the 5 shown.
Thank you, thank you. This is
So it's still a little confusing.
more
here.
complicated
We
than I
did
thought.
get, so first of all, let's agree on a price for the trees. What do we have? We had
We had an estimate that the
Estimate.
developer provided for, I think, $654 per tree.
654. Does that sound reasonable? Can we agree on
If you
that
want,
price?
I mean, I can text my landscaper right now and try to get a general number.
I
I
mean,
don't know if
the
that's-
purpose of the tree fund
So let me just
request.
kinda reset what's coming up next is the street acceptance, right? That's why there's an imperative to do something now.
Yeah.
So we need to wrap up this subdivision from 1965.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, otherwise you'd be like, oh, let's figure out something. So we're trying to come up with a dollar amount. And That's,
Well, the dollar amount is only necessary if it goes into a town tree fund for trees to be planted elsewhere. You could,
And does that go into a general fund too? Like, has the town used?
no, this is a new fund that we're creating, so I have a draft motion if that's what you want to accept, for trees to be planted elsewhere in town, on town property. Or you could, or you don't have to accept that. You could just waive, maybe have a general number of the trees.
I like the idea of sort of earning down the amount, you know, the idea that.
In the neighborhood.
We're not going to tell people, you have to put a tree here in your yard.
Exactly.
Clearly, they own the property now, so if all that money goes to the town, then, you know, everybody, then the homeowners don't get.
The neighbors don't benefit from it.
Right.
So
Right.
And it sounds like there's 35 trees within this neighborhood that can be planted amongst the folks who have spoken. I mean, they're considering 4.
I've only heard opposition from one resident.
I think the trees can probably be planted. It sounds like a larger discussion has to happen between the developer and the neighbors to actually have a map where it's actually circled where they want them to approve that.
I would think the larger concern is not, well, if you don't want a tree, then you don't need to have a tree, but is it fair? People who were planning to spend thousands of dollars to do landscaping will be able to get the benefit, and then other people don't if there's not enough notice. But I mean, I think it's.
Yeah, this is between the town and the developer of the road. It's not between the neighbors and whoever built their property. So the developer of the road owes the town, how many trees?
35.
35.
No, I mean total.
Oh.
He-
Oh, 60 total.
60 trees, and you planted 25? No, we want to know how many you planted.
0.
0. Oh, well that,
So you owe us 60.
okay, that was a different story from what I heard coming in here.
The home developer planted 15.
So
In the general location that's
builder
shown
of
on
the builder of the homes themselves, he
Yeah.
he did the plantings around the detention basin, I believe. There's 15 trees?
15 trees.
Nothing in our yard.
Just around the detention.
So Mr. Olenoff, are you talking, I understand this is a deal between us and the town. However, would you entertain setting up a fund and having that under control of the homeowner association? And, we work out an arrangement with them and they can plant them wherever they want as a way
Well,
around that? Or?
The town's supposed to get 60 trees, and those trees are supposed to be in proximity of the street. Now, we need to see those trees. I think we can come to an agreement that, well, no, we can't really say that there's money given for trees and they can be planted everywhere, because these 60 trees are supposed to be planted
For street trees.
as street trees.
And maybe there's other places in town where you need street trees.
Right, so the town can always take that money and do that. But, so the question is, who owes us those trees? Is it you, the developer, and you said you planted none?
We owe 60 trees.
You owe 60 trees, and times 654. So out of that amount of money, since not all of them have been planted along the road.
Right.
The home developer has planted about 10 trees where we would have planted 10 trees.
But it's not his responsibility.
No,
Right.
It wasn't his responsibility to do that.
I don't want to
I understand what you're saying.
I'm not trying to get out of the 60 trees.
I know.
And you haven't made any arrangements between him and so he's, even though he planted them, you're not really fulfilling your obligation to provide those trees,
So-
even though trees may be there along the street.
So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Olin. So we owe the town 50 trees. So maybe we should set up a 50-tree fund for the
Right.
town for plantings wherever. We can
Then
deal with the homeowners
You can make any
association
arrangements you
separate.
want with the homeowners.
I
I don't know how we can,
We
so I don't know how we can
If you want to
condition.
speak, you just gotta get up to the podium. Thank you.
So, but what you're proposing right now is that you create a tree fund to put trees somewhere else in the town of Westwood, and you're going to approve a new street that, quite frankly, is barren. And so, this is a new development of high-value homes, And it's to the best interest of this community and the town of Westwood to outfit this development with trees and, and shrubbery or whatever that would make it look like that would earn the taxes that are going to go to the town. And so creating a fund and then putting the trees in some dark street somewhere else just to put trees in, it doesn't make sense. The intent is to improve the value of this community.
Yeah, I would rather see the trees, as many trees as we can get into this neighborhood, because it does look, it's
barren.
It looks barren.
Will take all of the trees. I can guarantee you, and I'm not sure if Abigail who spoke
Right.
with you, but I can guarantee you they're not. I don't think that I think they're believing it has to be where they were plotted. I do believe they will take them in other areas of their property.
Please, just going forward, we need to be at the podium in front of the mic, okay?
Great. Yes.
So again, my problem
I think
is.
the town just needs to realize that part of the problem we were having when we were trying to sit down is if these are street trees, they're street trees. If they're backyard trees, I'm not sure that's the appropriate means for 60 trees. But that's not what the
Trees are
intent
not,
was.
they're not what you're responsible for.
Right. So I, you know,
Right, I agree, that if,
And we
there's
don't
six-
wanna argue with everybody.
there should be 60 trees planted in proximity to the street, or money should go to the town for any of those trees which are missing.
I would say the difference. Yeah.
The difference, yeah.
Yeah, so can't we make an agreement that we start from some number for all the trees, the total dollar amount, and then have them the ability to, for every tree that's planted proximate to the street for some distance, in front yards, basically, that will reduce the amount that's owed to the town?
Well, yeah, well, we have to resolve, we want to try to resolve it tonight. If this street is ever going to be accepted, and what's the timetable for that? What's the?
Well, so the applicant is looking for street acceptance at this upcoming town meeting. So before November, so usually within September and October, you would work with the developer to close out everything within the right-of-way and have to release them from their performance guarantee and review all of their subdivision approval. So that needs to be done before you can give a recommendation for a street acceptance, which is why. So it sounds like the applicant came to this planning board meeting a little prematurely. I recommended you speak out to all the homeowners previously, because when the planning board, when you are reviewing and closing out a subdivision and giving street acceptance, you're checking it for compliance with the plans that you approved. So if the trees are there, you could approve that.
So how's the timing work if they were to take this, go talk to the neighbors and fill out the spaces and come back to the next meeting? Do we have time for that?
The next meeting, September 19th. It sounds like the planning board is flexible on.
We can go ahead and say that this street should be going forward for town acceptance. Of course, it has to meet our approval for acceptance, which means the 60 trees should either be planted along the road, or we should have received the money of $654 per tree before that time.
Right.
And then we can recommend that the street be accepted.
I think that works, Mr. Olenoff, and we can, before the next meeting, make sure we touch base with the homeowners association to see how many trees they would actually take that are street trees. And we'll work with Abby to keep you updated.
Yeah, and so you understand when the street trees they talk about, it's 3-inch caliper, and then we're typically talking about oak, maple. What are the other?
Dogwoods are some of the ones that I've already gone in as well.
They've gone in, okay.
Yeah.
And so in the case where a homeowner's garden has already planted trees in front of your house, then that's between you and the developer as far you receive credit for that. We can't really get involved in that.
would it be easy just to give everybody a credit for the number of trees? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, you go first.
Okay.
Just let him make his comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you could.
Would it be easier to just give everybody a credit for the amount of trees that were supposed to be in front of their house? And
So if there are already 3 trees in front of someone's house, then you could claim those as trees you've planted,
And reimbursed.
but I'm assuming you reimbursed the homeowner.
Right, so in theory, we know how many trees are supposed to be in front of everybody's lot. We could give them 654, whatever that number came out to be.
If one,
Per tree that's in front of
If
their
it's
lot.
up to the town
If it's-
standards, 3 inches and.
3-inch
and all
caliper.
that.
Diameter and the right species, then yes, you
And
can
then,
give
and
them
then
credit.
they would go and plant it. Some people, I
He's saying
think,
something
also got
different.
pushed back about the time of year. We were trying to get the plants to
Yeah,
plant.
no. So any trees that the town gives you credit for have to be in the ground, all planted. They could have been planted already previously by the homeowner, and you can take credit for it as long as you reimburse the homeowner for those trees.
Right, so tomorrow, we could write a check to every homeowner for the number of trees that they're supposed to have in front of their
No,
lot.
the ones that
That's
they actually have.
Yeah, the ones that are
planted.
already
Not
in the
just supposed to
ground,
have.
yeah.
They have to actually be
They actually
there.
have, but I think outside of this lot, there's not any of the streetscape trees that we're talking about.
I see there's like, if there's 60, if that's the number there should have been, and if there's like 10 or 15 that are currently qualify, then you could reimburse those homeowners for those trees. And then you could offer to the others homeowners, tell me where you want a tree, and come back here with a map that says, okay, we found a place for 40 more trees that are close to the street. And so then that leaves like 10 trees or something, and so 10 times 654 goes to the
town.
tree fund. So you kind of, that way you have an incentive to find a place for trees, work with the homeowners.
And you should be able to go ahead and plant them right away if they're in designated spots, or if you're moving them considerably, then get approval from the town planner. Just to make sure that they still qualify as street trees.
I think that works.
We might want to get 3 bids. and
We can get
use
3
whoever
bids, but
you
we know,
want.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. The next thing I ask is, just to qualify, is it 12 feet from the street that we were talking about? I think that was what,
In front of the house is what he was saying.
okay, because I just want,
from the street.
Yeah.
from the street, it's 12
Yeah.
feet. So I would just ask, we're not talking about trees in our backyard that we'd love to plant. I mean, we're talking about making the neighborhood more
Yeah, exactly,
bountiful
yeah.
and, you know, green, if you will, right? So some of that comes from putting a couple trees between homes, but maybe it's closer to the street between homes, just to have a little bit of lot, you know, separation.
I'd be
So
fine with
can we
that.
look at expanding that 12-foot marker
long-
to a little bit wider, like 20 feet maybe or
No,
something?
it has to be greater than 12.
Oh, it has to be greater than 12. Okay,
We're
so
saying it's
No.
It's 12 feet from the end of the sidewalk. That's where
Right.
they're supposed to be.
And then
Okay.
the sidewalk
so if
would
we
be
want
at
to
the
do
road.
on the side,
The edge of the
So I think
sidewalk,
we
I
have
think.
an idea, a consensus here. I think it's just important to note, the key thing is, we don't want to pay for any, we don't want like the illusory tree. You know, we want to basically know that it's either there, it's being planted there before the street acceptance,
It's getting paid.
or it's not going to happen, and then you pay.
Goes into the town fund.
It goes into the town fund. I don't want to just say, oh, here's where we could put 60, and then it's, over.
And the trees that count towards the 60 now, the 12 feet is measured from where?
I'll have to check that. I
What
don't
is
remember
it?
if it said the right of way
From the
or
back of the
maybe
sidewalk.
From the back of the sidewalk.
it might
So-
be the
so-
The
sidewalk.
property side of the sidewalk? or the
Okay,
street
so,
side of the sidewalk?
so the, I think it's another 1 foot.
Property side of the sidewalk.
Street
12 feet
side.
from there. Yes.
Yeah, so you only have like 1 foot between the edge of the sidewalk and the property line, according to when I went over with Abby today. So those, sounds like the trees are 11 feet into each lot's, into the property owner's property. So we want them in that 12 feet more or less, but not too far away, because we want them to still be street trees. So should we set a maximum?
So, yeah, but just to qualify, so the trees that you're looking at that have already been planted, none of,
Don't worry about
only a
those.
few of them would
I
qualify.
wouldn't worry.
Oh, really?
For the caliper or
Yeah.
the distance?
The distance, for the distance.
So
The
they're
caliber's
further-
there, but, we're trying to line our street with trees, right?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
they're inside of 12 feet, but they're way out, they're like 6 feet away from the sidewalk. I mean, they're like plenty into the,
They look right.
I
they
think
look
that
right.
should be
Yeah,
fine.
he's been
Well,
there.
exactly where are they as you measure them?
They're lining the sidewalk.
I can, do you
Oh,
want me
yeah,
to
I
show
have,
you?
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
pictures too.
But I mean, what's the distance?
So if I'm lot 21,
That's
right,
what do
Kev?
you think? It's probably 6 feet?
So they're like
Probably.
just a little bit closer, like.
Probably 6 or 8 feet from the sidewalk. I mean, it's well into
I mean, the
the.
landscaper did it so it wouldn't grow into the
It should be
sidewalk.
fine.
Right, so they can be closer than 12 feet to the
Okay,
sidewalk.
that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
That's,
I'm concerned about them being further than 12 feet.
Yeah.
I heard you say
Okay.
greater than 12 feet, and that's why I was like, well, wait a minute, that's gonna be well inside the lot. So it's 12 feet and in.
Yeah.
All right, one at a time, folks, one at a time, please.
So does anyone need more than 12 feet? That's the question.
So yes, so some of us may need more than 12 feet because again, these were just, the land was just leveled and so there's no separation between houses and yards. And so it would look very nice to actually put some trees in, again, not in our backyard and very evident from the street, but it may be greater than 12 feet and maybe we can pick a maximum or something like that. But it would just make it look a lot nicer than it does now.
So I think what we're trying to cut through the middle here. The trees are all in front of the house, on the street side of the house, right? But for example, our neighbor here who has a retaining wall, those trees can't be 12 feet from the house. Our neighbor who's already put trees in, their lot is flat and runs alongside the sidewalk. It makes sense for the trees to be near the sidewalk. So what we're all agreeing is all the trees are in front of the house to the benefit of the town, right? And we'll just have to negotiate, which makes sense for landscaping purposes, where the trees need to be to make it look right, to make it look like a neighborhood. If you guys are okay with that, we're okay with that. And we'll put in as many trees as we can to make it look like a developed, mature neighborhood.
You use up all 60?
We would love to.
Maybe, ideally, yes, but if
You
not,
use
then it
all
goes to
60
the
and
town.
Get them along the street?
We believe,
Including the person doesn't want any, so that means
We'll
somehow.
talk with them. I just don't think they.
I think they don't, I think they misunderstood the requirements. I really do. Because, I mean, honestly, these lots
All
are
right, well,
barren.
So I think we can say that we own 60 trees and go ahead and decide where they are and give them, show the location and then the ones that are present that you think qualify to Abby for approval for the locations. And if it comes out less than 60 trees, then the developer owes us
Yep.
$654 per tree.
I think we're all agreeing with that, yes?
All right, problem solved.
Yep. Thank you for being flexible and coordinating with us.
We're
Thank
trying to
you.
catch up in the last, 5 weeks as well and 3 years of stuff.
My only advice also
Thank
though,
you.
is just when this does come back to us, that there's, I don't want to have someone come show up and says, I never heard anything about this and I don't get a tree, so it's just.
We'll take care of
Okay.
it.
We'll
I will own that.
manage our neighborhood.
So do we need a decision now, or we can just wait?
I think you could continue it to the next meeting, so after you've spoken with all the homeowners.
Just so I understand, we'll plant the trees, we'll sit down with everybody and plant the trees and be ready for that next meeting.
You can plant trees tomorrow if you like.
Right, but
If you want any tree that's already there counted towards those 60 trees,
right, which
you have to reimburse
we'll reimburse
the homeowner.
the people who planted those trees. But, so the 12, if someone wants something in their side of their yard, is that what we're okaying here today?
That's the front. And
No, it has to be
It's just gotta be in front of the house.
generally within 12 feet or less from the sidewalk. And in cases where there are problems, you can get approval from Abby for greater.
Okay, so I just want to understand, because again, the lots are pretty barren. So if it's in front of our front door, for example, or at least that space, can we qualify that as we look at a plan? Because we would like to provide some separation between lots and coverage of some of the utility boxes. And those may or may not be within the 12 feet, but they would be within the front of the house, if that makes sense.
How many feet what's the maximum?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not good at
We're
that.
stretching 12 feet.
right.
30
We're
yards?
stretching 12 feet.
30 feet is the max distance between the street and the front door, but that's, I guess we're losing some feet because we're talking about from the sidewalk end to the,
Probably 20 feet.
so another,
Yeah, so
so
I
up to
wouldn't go
20 feet.
beyond 20 feet.
Okay, so we could have up to 20 feet.
Is that okay?
So, but it sounds like, you're going to come back with the general layout for the planning board to review at the next meeting, I think.
Sounds
Yeah.
pretty.
So I think that way you can approve essentially you'd be reviewing a modified plan.
Right, and mark trees that are already in existence which qualify and proposed trees for ones that aren't there. And they should add up to 60. If they don't, then you owe the difference.
So on the
Yeah.
on the 19th, we can come here with a plan of planted trees, as long as it's within a 15-foot difference from the street.
I'd be fine with that.
And it can anywhere between several feet to 20 feet.
Okay?
In general, try to get close to the 12 feet as works
Yeah,
out.
the neighborhood looked great.
And-
Trees are looking.
And then now,
And these
Then
are
we
trees,
get
we're
the
not
plan.
talking about shrubs in the front of people's yards.
These are the
and-
trees.
Just so, okay. Right.
and then, we can approve that plan, but then those trees need to be planted
They'll be planted,
before town meeting, because the street won't be accepted unless every one of those 60
Right.
trees, or the money to make up the difference, has been received by the town.
Right, and you'd really want it before the public hearing for town meeting, so you'd want
Yeah, the
to
sooner
do that
the
right
better,
away.
Because waiting for the last minute when decisions are made at town meeting is not a good thing.
So I think we need a motion to continue this to our September 19th
Yeah.
meeting.
I make a motion to continue this, the hearing on Thompson Street, till the next planning board meeting on September 19th.
Yeah,
Copy Street.
which will be here at 7 PM.
Carver Street at 7 PM.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you for your help.
thank you.
Folks.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you. The third item on our agenda is review and discuss zoning warrant articles for consideration at November town meeting.
Okay.
So we have one street acceptance to add to that list.
Yes, we did receive that to the, but that's not necessarily coming from you.
Conversations outside?
So the developer has submitted a request to the Board of Selectmen to accept
So we have,
Thompson Ave.
so we have one street acceptance, and we have one, the end of, Glacier.
So I'm thinking for zoning amendments, you'll have the Thompson Ave street acceptance, and then the change to the accessory use table to allow the cafeterias in the highway business zoning districts. I did, Nora's back today, and I did briefly review with her, and she thought that we intentionally left it out of the highway business zone, that we allowed it in the ARO and the industrial, because at those locations, there wasn't any places for employees to go to lunch to. And that way, in highway business, people would be encouraged to visit restaurants. But if you still want to move forward with this zoning change, it was at the request of the property owner who's looking to market the building. Now our industrial districts have changed a lot. So we allow it in the University Ave area, in Canton Street. We allow cafeterias where there's many restaurants now,
Yeah, what was the
University Station.
rationale, at the time? So how many years is this going back?
I'm not sure. I have to
don't-
do a
this was
little more
one I don't
research.
recall.
So what is the rationale back then? Like, I was trying to wrap to understand.
Basically, it would compete, right?
It would compete with,
Local
Right.
So
restaurants.
somebody might, instead of walking a half mile or a mile to Islington Center to Islington Pizza, they could go down to the vending machine and get a Snickers bar. So I don't think that's, I'm not concerned that that's a huge,
the competition.
Right.
competition. I suppose they could start up there could be, it could grow from that, though. There was a restaurant, there's like a snack bar in that building next to where the Audi dealer used to be. And everybody in the neighborhood went to that place.
Oh, fascinating,
It was like a grill inside there. It's Advanced Instruments, I think. So I think it's technically in Norwood. But
Yeah, so the competition works both ways. In other words, you can say, if they put in a cafeteria, that's competition against local restaurants nearby. But at the same time, any person can go,
Well,
that
is
go to one of
that,
those
is that the
restaurants
case?
could go to those things, and it's it's competition.
Yeah, but is it the case that it's open to the public?
A lot of them are.
Some of them are, and some of them aren't. Some of them
Well, I
are.
don't think we can specify that, but the fact that a lot of them are means, why should we care?
Well, I remember we had University Station, well, pardon me, back before the University Station, we had a appliance distributor down on University Ave. They had a cafeteria for that company. It was Eastco was the name of the company. I believe it was Eastco, but that was a private cafeteria for the employees or the subcontractors of the distributor. It wasn't open to the public. That's a question I have is, can we regulate whether it's public or private? And if we can or we can't, which way would we want to go?
And how widespread is this particular district? Like, what are...
I mean, so I think actually, so the way the zoning is written now, we don't have a definition for cafeteria, but the way we have it in our accessory use table, it says retail uses such as cafeteria, snack bars, gift shops, vending machines, dispensing food, soft drinks, provided that any such uses shall be conducted primarily for the convenience of employees. So it sounds like that's the intent for it to be private, but we don't technically regulate. So we could...
For the convenience of employees or open to the public, because why would we care?
Well, it's not that we would care, but by saying that, would we make it the fact that it has to be open to the public?
No, no. I think we could say, or, it's for the employees or could be open to the public. We can't make open to the public, but it's to their, in many cases, it's to their benefit because they get more business.
You're right. You're right.
I'm actually less inclined to have it that way.
Or right now, Janice, we have some that are...
And on it, can we pull up the zoning map so we can see what this implicates?
Well, what we want to do, I think, is just make something uniform in all industrial, all non-residential districts.
I agree. Just so
right
we don't
now,
have
they
this
are.
conversation
We
10 more
have
times.
some that are open to the public, right? Don't we?
The ones that are open to the public have common victual license from the selectmen. And the ones that are not open to the public do not require a license. They're permitted through the health department with their health permits, but they're not considered licensed by the selectmen, so they're not public.
So have all the ones that anyone can walk in off the street and use, they've all gotten the license from the selectmen? Or are there a few where...
Not all of them. There's some that maybe are out there that I haven't caught up with all of them because some of them, like for instance, I know that before it was Eversource, was it National Grid? What was it?
Yeah, NSTAR.
NSTAR. That no one can get into NSTAR without an ID or a badge or something like that, and so someone may have lunch there if they were doing business with some employee or whatever, and so they were not issued CV licenses. But some of those things might be changing, and they may need licenses, CV licenses.
So if there were like there is at Bach, Honda and stuff, those are the Tobach. I think Toyota.
So which
over there,
one
they
are
have
we
a
talking about
cafe. And so if you're a customer, you can go get
Well,
stuff.
for instance,
It's in Norwood, but
right. Well, at Prime,
Highway business.
at Prime Mercedes,
Yes.
they have a Mercedes cafe, and they do have a CV license.
They have a CV license, which
So-
they would have to operate that?
Yes, and the other part of it is that, like the place, I don't know about the one at Bach, but do they charge for food? They do. So, because I know that I've been to other dealerships where they might have donuts and waters and this and that. and you just-
My dealer gives out
that's
But they're not
cookies.
Right.
charging.
It's not a retail
you get
establishment.
like a sandwich and everything, and
Really?
so it's
Yeah, so,
because you need it
and I
because
know
you're
they
waiting
do
in
that
your
at,
car for hours and hours.
So I'm all for reducing any unnecessary regulation here, because who cares as long as it's approved by the health department? And why does it need to be approved by the selectmen if it's open to the public? It just,
They would need a
What are we
common
gaining
victualer's
Yeah.
license.
you know what?
They would need a common victualer's license for a
Right, like
retail
food,
operation.
yeah.
But
The
that's,
food
okay, so
establishment.
that's just a general,
Right.
okay, so we make sure that collecting sales tax and things like that.
But this does create competition with Lambert's and things like that.
Certainly would.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be really significant.
Yeah,
But it would
exactly.
still add some competition to the other lunch spots. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, it's not an easy one. for
No,
me.
it's not.
Well, I mean, I just don't think we should.
I don't think,
Regulated.
I agree. Less regulation, the better, is my opinion. But we have to get it right, and I'd like to get it right and worded so we don't have to revisit this.
But they have to go to the selectmen to get their license.
If they're gonna
So
operate
that's
a
the effort,
retail,
if they're going to, yeah, open to the public. So that's a,
so that's the
that's
regulation.
an extra step they have to
Right,
take.
and doesn't belong
That
to
should be
us.
more than enough.
I mean, that seems to divide it for me pretty clearly. If it's an employee cafeteria, why not? You know, why not allow that? Yeah, there's a few people who won't leave the office and go to Lambert's, but when it takes that step to being open to the public, then there's another procedure for that.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, having employee vending machines, a cafeteria, snack bar kind of thing, I think that's only to the benefit of the people who work in those areas where there's not much. There's really not a lot of food options.
Right.
And this is like Route 1, basically. Is there?
Yeah.
Is it
That's
also
Yep.
anywhere else? Is it?
Highway businesses, at Route 1 and then Southwest Park area, those office.
109?
Past Lambert's,
Oh, yes, yes,
right
yes,
before
yeah.
you get
How
to
about
the
over at
highway.
109, Fox Hill Village?
That is the arrow
Yeah,
where
that's-
Meditech is, and that is allowed.
That
So
is
we
allowed.
allow it in
Yeah, we should
those
just be
areas.
consistent
Okay.
everywhere.
I agree. I
Okay, so
agree.
we could draft, so the next step is we submit these changes tomorrow to get on the warrant, usually a couple sentences, and then within the next few days, actually, we'll have to send the legal notice, public hearing notice to the newspaper. So your hearing will be October 3rd, and that way it's before the Finance and Warrant Commission's October 17th public hearing. So that's
Okay.
the big one. So within, probably at your next meeting, we can review the exact zoning language as proposed.
So we just need to include the sections that are relevant, which includes the definition or whatever, where it says for use of the employees, we should be able to find that section and where you're reading from and expand that to add or for the general public if a business license is obtained. So we should make sure that's flexibility is, we change that, make it very clear.
And
Sure,
then
that kind of opens.
I,
Oh,
That
so
kind of
like
opens the,
here and-
makes it
Sure.
more likely that there'll be
Exactly.
an argument about it almost, you know, kind of.
right, well, we don't,
What are they gonna argue about?
the way it's written now,
competition thing,
Exactly.
right,
Yeah, but I thought, I don't think we're,
I would just change the
I don't
box
think we're in the
to
business.
yes.
I think we're in the business of determining whether there is or isn't competition.
Well, I think it's that we like the idea of an employee cafeteria. I think that
Yeah.
sounds good, or a snack bar, or whatever. But I could see where people would say, well, someone might use that as an excuse to open up another kind of
An additional business. yeah.
Additional
But then they have to go to the selectmen, the selectmen will say, aren't you overdoing it for a company cafeteria? Aren't you going overboard, and the selectmen should be able to.
Yeah, there is a process to keep it in check. I agree with Steve that way.
And my point is more that if you add that language in there, it will raise that objection in people's minds, and it'll make it.
And I'm sorry, what exact language are we speaking to?
If you add to this, as Steve was suggesting, you want to say,
Well,
for the convenience of employees or the general public, if it's, if a common victualer's license is obtained.
Yeah.
well, we don't usually say, reference other licenses, so, I mean,
I agree.
Oh, right,
We-
yeah,
so we
can
don't-
just take it that whole, if you don't want to say for the use of the employees, just take that phrase out, and then it's, by omission, it's just saying a cafeteria.
A cafeteria in the company, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
But unless we say, I mean, right now we have all these ones that are open to the public. Is
Again,
that a
but I'm-
violation
but I'm not
of the
that
zoning
clear
bylaw
on that.
because it says for the inconvenience of the employees?
well, it doesn't say it It's not allowed. It just
Well,
says
what's that
intended
gonna-
for
what's
the
that?
convenience. And it's listed in the accessory use table, so it's not in our separate
What section are we
definitions.
looking
It's
at?
in the table 4.35, accessory uses.
Well, see, this 4351, it says, and have no exterior advertising display, so
Yeah.
pretty much you can't
Right,
advertise.
that's gonna limit you
Yeah,
right there.
that's great, yeah, that absolutely should stay in.
Okay.
I would just change the letter in the table.
Yeah, if we just change the letter in the
wouldn't add any
table,
more
that doesn't
info.
stop that doesn't stop.
I'm fine
Right.
with the language as it is and just permitting it in highway business.
It sounds like you have a
Okay.
specific request from
Okay.
a particular business looking to rent, so
Yes.
if it's approved, then you can notify them.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, that
All right,
language is
so
fine.
if we have this language in here now, then,
Why mess with it?
well, but how is it we have this language in here which says primary for the convenience of employees? Oh, because it says primarily.
Right.
Is the key word.
So if you have someone off the street, a salesman or something at the building, he can use it as well, but it's primarily for the employees of the company. No exterior signage, no marketing,
So all
anything
you have to
like
do is
that.
change the letter in the table and it's.
And that's it,
it's
we're done.
done.
And we're
It's
done,
done.
and
Okay.
we're on solid ground.
All right, so we've had enough examples of where they've opened it to the public and got the license from the selectmen.
I have a fairly recent location at 101 Station Drive. There's a little, well, the company is called Nextine, but they have, when you walk into the into the building, before you get past, like the reception area, just on the right-hand side, there's a little cafe, and they don't turn anyone away. Like, they often told me that people will, I'm sorry, I should take my own advice. People will come in from the, maybe catching the train and will grab a cup of coffee.
Okay.
And they're not employees of the company, and they do have a CV. Primarily, it is for the employees.
Now, what building is this you're talking about?
It's 101 Station
Oh,
Drive.
not Station Drive, you mean?
That's the new or renovated building with General Dynamics.
Right.
Yeah, it's up the hill.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Where the bike share is.
Yes.
The private bike share, by the way.
But with that CV license, are they allowed to market and advertise?
They don't have any signage outside that
Right.
advertises
Yeah.
that.
There was
So that would be
the
regulated by
one on
zoning.
Blue Hill Drive,
Okay.
for a while they had a sign, sandwich board sign, they got permission. I think they got a ZBA permission to put it out for a while, just to get the thing going. But I think they had to do that, they actually had to get a,
I don't know which one.
But I think we have
I don't know which one.
a decision here.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
stick with
agree.
it.
The footnote's fine, well, the way it's stated, we're just changing the letter in the table.
Okay. All right, so that's one change. And then in reviewing your first item on the agenda, the healthcare medical uses, Nora, Joe, and I were kind of looking at our zoning bylaw and realized we have called like hospitals, doctor's offices, like outpatient, day surgeries, those kinds of things. We have kind of different terminology for them, so I think I'd suggest draft some language to clarify our definitions at the beginning of the zoning bylaw and this make sure we have consistent terms throughout the bylaw. Because in some of our overlay districts, like the University Ave mixed use overlay, we say healthcare office, but then elsewhere we say medical office. So that would be one proposal I'd like to bring forward.
I'd be fine with
Just
that.
different
Right.
definition to the two different words?
So is that only, is that
Just to
like a
clarify.
house cleaning thing more?
Yeah, now that we have.
A little bit more than housekeeping, I think,
With
because we have to
Brigham
be
Women's,
clear.
it changes
Yeah, with
it.
Brigham Women's, it's,
need to-
hospital,
yeah.
and so I think we should just make those stronger, different, to clarify where those are allowed.
I'm fine with that clarification.
Okay, so I still have to work on that specific language, but I could at least submit that to the Board of
So
Selectmen.
it's likely that we're gonna have a town meeting?
Probably. So I think they'll be reviewing at their next meeting
The
next week on
11th
Monday
with
and the
selectmen.
11th. So I think they will probably. We didn't have one last year, but we had on the last few years in the fall.
Okay.
So that was the only change I was proposing to come from you, from the planning board. I know last time we had talked a little bit about any changes to the FMUOD. Nora is back today. I only talked to her briefly. She said she had been is working with the Board of Selectmen on possibly the possible cap and limit on the number of residential in the all the zones that allow for housing in FMUODs, but that hasn't been reviewed by the Board of Selectmen yet. So they want to discuss that and consider that, but they haven't met on that yet. So I assume they'll be doing that, I believe, at their next meeting.
And I don't think
So they
that's a
haven't
good
met yet.
idea because we have enough other things to regulate the size of any development, which is, the floor area, the internal surface, number of parked cars.
I completely
all those
disagree with
things
you on
like
that point.
And,
The
well, that was
Roach
discussion.
Brothers alone is a massive property that the square footage on that, you're looking at 100 apartments just on that property as it is.
Right, and so that could happen, so.
That's what I'm saying, but you're saying that we have enough restrictions in place that we can handle that, but there really aren't. So other towns have put caps in certain areas.
So if it came out to be 100, they could put in 100 units at Roach Brothers, are you saying 100 is just on its face too much?
I would think that would change the character of the town. It really starts changing that character. We look at the FMUODs go across a very large area. So if you start lining up apartments up and down Washington Street and adding to traffic and volume, for me it starts getting into a public safety type of item. So I mean, I think a cap would be a good idea. We now have language in the bylaws that allow an owner to go across street to start adding to different projects. So I don't think that we have the right caps in place.
So it would just be number of
The
units
challenge is
per
coming
acre.
to a number.
Yeah. So sort of like if all else fails, you still want a maximum number there per
I think
acre.
that would make residents feel more comfortable knowing, because when you start going project to projects, residents within the town start to wonder, where's the end of this? And I know that, Whole Foods just got bought out by Amazon, so they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on Roach Brothers to make a profit. You have Wegmans around the area, so that property alone is primed for that type of development. You can add a lot of apartments there. Especially a project was just approved where they did underground parking. So now you have underground parking, so you can really start changing character. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea to cap. The question is, what is that number?
That's it. You're either gonna kill development.
Yeah, which I don't want to do.
Right, because that's, we need these
Exactly,
economic
yeah.
engines that we need running smoothly.
Yeah.
So that's the question, the number. And everyone's got a different number,
Yeah.
so.
It would definitely add some certainty to things if you picked a number, because the way these meetings go, people are thinking there could be hundreds and hundreds of things.
Yeah.
But it's like with the accessory apartments, there was a cap for that, right? So that was, but it was at least, it provided some limit that people could see, and then it had to be voted on to raise it, and so it provided some kind of a
Well, we might be the only town that has a cap on the number of accessory apartments.
That's a good thing, though.
So the state legislature last year on the zoning reform bill, the Senate put in a provision that accessory apartments would be as of right, and there was no cap on the number.
And that
So.
and that got through?
Through the Senate, yes.
Got through the Senate?
It never went to the House.
Right, okay. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, if that went through as is, then that would just take out our cap.
Right, and we won't have any say in the matter. That's fine, but I think as long as the town has a say in the matter, I think we should have a cap, as far as that goes.
Now, what about the footnote for crossing streets to add to adding square footage for projects? It seemed like that was included in error, so how do we go about fixing that?
Do you want a sponsor change? I haven't had a chance to draft language since our last meeting.
But
The
so
question is, the
That was
town.
originally for University Avenue, and it got applied to everywhere else?
Yes, because there was a property in University Ave that's also in the FMUOD.
It just said FMUOD, it didn't specify.
FMUOD 1, and so it went under all of them.
It should have said FMUOD 1, but it,
So the question is either you, the planning board, sponsor articles for this upcoming town meeting, or the Board of Selectmen. I think the Board of Selectmen will discuss considering the number of apartments, but
Well, I think
I haven't.
the planning board is the proper body for introducing zoning amendments. If the selectmen want a zoning amendment, they should recommend it to us, and we should take it from there. And then, they can always,
I disagree with you
say
there.
it's jointly sponsored.
Well,
I don't think that's something we should rush into either. I think that's something that can wait for the spring.
Right, all zoning articles have to come to the planning board for a public hearing, and the planning board has to make a recommendation to town meeting. That's regulated by state law, but the Board of Selectmen can submit zoning changes. So at times it's sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, or by petitioners, or by property owners, or it's sponsored by the planning board. Usually zoning is sponsored by the planning board. Just a question of what do you want to submit, tomorrow.
well,
for
what about
consideration.
the footnote for projects? So that was, what can we do for that?
Can we just add the language of FMUOD 1?
Yeah, I think we could revise the language. We had some drafted language that we had also looked at a floor amendment at town meeting that made more sense.
Yes. Yep.
What was that?
It's just a question of whether you want to bring it
That
up
was
again now.
50%
And
versus,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
basically olive branch.
Right.
I think there's a couple of things. There's, without the ability to combine parcels, then you're never going to get a
Absolutely.
project that makes it that even gets in front of us. I mean, arguably the stuff that's being proposed is not contiguous, and so so without the ability to combine places across the street, you won't even get to the planning board theoretically. The problem is when you combine several places and then build one tall apartment complex,
Right.
and you basically use the other properties as a fig leaf or something.
Well, over at High Street, you have we always refer to as the Bergson block, and then you had the Convenient block. They're separated by Hartford Street. That technically could go all in as one project,
True.
That I don't see.
Do you mean the
as
Santander?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that through there. That could go in as one project. They could combine for one project. And that I don't think is necessary. Okay? So I think if we just add into the language for the footnote, for FMUOD 1,
All you have to do is move the footnote.
or just move the footnote and,
Now it's for the entire line, and you can move it to whatever FMUODs you want to. So it's here right now.
Yeah.
On the general line, or you can put it on just the ones you want going across.
right, which is just one.
Which is just one, well.
I don't know where else
That's-
we'd need it,
I'd be fine with that.
but we'd have to draft full language for that to make that happen?
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Now, how
not
is
right
that
now.
different From the warrant, how is that different from the petition article?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got a
it is
whole mess
similar,
of
yeah.
problems from
Yeah.
that.
What were they trying to do there? They went.
They removed the footnote from FMUD 6 and 7, which was High Street and
So they,
High Street and Washington Street.
Yeah.
That was one of several.
That was the petition article, and then
That was one single petition article?
but did the
Or-
article do more than that?
I
No,
thought
that
so.
was
So
it
that
for
was
this
one.
one.
Yeah.
One was, I believe it's primarily to prevent this situation where you're able to combine lots that aren't together in order.
Oh, they were trying to
build a
stop
large
any
project.
combination.
Any combination of, that's going too far, in my opinion.
But I think our compromise idea that we talked about was to do something that limited the building,
By percentage, right?
like. the
Right,
building by
we
percentage,
said,
so Can't be more than 50, like. more
percent
than
of a,
50%.
of a building, I think.
Well,
More 50%
the
of
overall
a,
project. And you wanna say an individual building can't be more than some other.
So the example would be if it was 100, if it was 100,000 square feet, the way it is now, you can have 100,000 square feet of residential. So it's 100. With the change that was brought to the floor, it would be 100 and then 50.
right, I think the floor amendment that you suggested was, instead of it being 50% of the total gross floor area with any, any project within FMUD, you said 50% of any building within the FMUD.
I thought that was a great compromise.
And that
Yeah, I
pretty
agree.
much-
I agree.
If you see what's being built everywhere, that is not what's being built everywhere. So it would be directly, including the thing we're going to talk about, I think, later. Like the pattern I'm seeing everywhere is the 3 stories with a couple
Exactly.
of very minimal retail establishments on the first floor, and then the apartments are the rest of it. So if you do a 50% limitation, then you'll get to apartments above, retail below, and that's like what you see in town centers, a lot of places. I don't know if it's economically.
Right, so I think it would be more restrictive and would have consequences.
And like I said, there's a fine line on those restrictions of whether we're gonna stall it. And, that's where we gotta sit down and figure out where we're gonna, where we're gonna move the market to.
So how are we
That's
going to
very
deal with
important.
with the footnote for the?
I think like Steve says, we'll just add it to what district we wanted it. Which would just be one.
Which is what the intent
Which
of it
was the intent, but it just slipped by with, ambiguous language that.
Yeah, I'd be
the
in
problem we have
agreement
now.
with that.
Okay.
And then the other thing that came up that seemed to be echoed across the different boards, I remember the FinCom, even the selectmen echoed the sentiment had to do with height. So the idea of when you're combining different lots, and then you make one a 3-story and you keep one a single story, where things start not looking as harmonious as you would want it to look. Is there, that thought has come to my mind only because it seemed to be echoed amongst a number of different representatives within our town.
That's part of our function, though, to prevent something like that from happening.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you start doing these things, you're gonna end up with every building looking exactly the same.
Yeah.
size and shape.
We have to trust the board, I think.
Yeah, I hear you, I hear
know.
you, I hear you.
Where was the 50%?
Oh, yeah, it's in the,
Not in the chart.
it's not in the chart, it's section 9.5.13, so percentage of residential units, so page 9-28. Oh, that's the old bylaw. I don't know, sorry, I haven't put my tabs in the new one.
And 928, you said?
Yep.
Percentage of residential units.
I would like to see it reduced myself.
Percentage?
Yeah. Because right.
I think the whole point is, the whole point is 50% is, you know, first floor is commercial, second floor is residential. If you reduce it below 50%, it wouldn't make any sense for a developer to move ahead if they can't put an apartment.
Again, if we hit that number where we stall.
Yeah.
I think 50 is the minimum you can really go.
Yeah.
But it's not 50, it's actually, it's a doubling. It's equivalent. Well, I guess it depends on which way you're looking at it.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, again, it's part of our function, and, you know, we don't have to regulate everything, then they won't need us anymore. Everything we just written straight out, you know?
Yeah.
We have to have some flexibility to make everything work, you know? And they just have to trust the board.
Yeah, but
There's no room for a 4-story, the height restrictions, right? There's no.
Right, 36
You have
is
the height
the,
restriction, that's why everything
So
goes
without,
together.
if 3 stories is the maximum, then if you go below.
Just because of height, right?
If you go below 50%, I mean, I guess you could say 33, right? And you have 1 floor of residential and
But
ground
then-
retail, and then in the middle it would be.
But then everything would have to be 3 stories.
It would have to be 3 stories.
Everything would have to be 3 stories.
Now, this is saying no more,
You'd never
it's
be able to
saying
have
no
this-
more than 50% of the floor area can be residential. Now, if you reduce that below 50%, it's gonna have a building that's not gonna make any
It's not
sense
gonna
to
make any sense,
But that's not true. I've spoken to developers who can make money. They don't need the full amount. They don't, it's not a, like, I know what you're saying where you put, it definitely puts,
So you're
It's-
saying a full floor of commercial, maybe a half a floor of commercial and a half a floor of residential.
something less than what we have
Well,
now.
I understand what you're saying, but I have yet to speak to a builder that tells me that that financially works out.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying it can't.
No, I hear you, I hear you.
I just haven't been told by anyone that it can work out.
Yeah, I hear you.
And again, it all comes down to that, the stall number. Once we hit the stall number, what is this all
That's
for?
kind of what we had in, I mean, there was an apartment above the Hart Tavern. I mean, it was not very impressive.
Can you imagine that?
And there are things like that, you know, around that where there's like a small
Right, yeah.
apartment, and then above a failing business, you know. So that's kind of what we currently have. You know, and 1 and 1 sounds reasonable. I mean, that looks like what you see in a lot of towns. 2 floors of apartments over 1 retail is what I see happening all over the place, which a lot of people are.
Yeah, but you can't do that overall on a project because then it would violate the more than 50%.
You would have to combine it with the project next to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened, so sometimes if you take away too much flexibility, you end up in trouble because
Exactly.
the
You paint
reason the
yourself in
building
a
got
corner.
built on Washington Street is because they couldn't make the 1-story building with the post offices into 2 stories. So they could get a 3-story.
And there's a lot of businesses that don't want residences above it. So you're gonna always push it to one side.
No, but that's not what we want to do. We want to promote.
No, I agree.
We want to have
Residential
the
over
flexibility to
commercial.
do it
Yeah.
however makes best sense for that area.
And most businesses won't even know there's someone above them.
McDonald's.
So they have McDonald's.
Yeah,
there.
they have
Just saying
McDonald's,
There
they're
are
a bit-
McDonald's in buildings all over.
Sure.
You know, where they've been.
Yeah.
They're in the McDonald's in the first floor of skyscrapers.
Yeah, commercial spaces
They'll go
are
anywhere.
pretty,
Yeah.
they don't
That's
pay
the
much
problem.
attention to such a thing.
So it sounds like we have the footnote as an amendment. I can't think of anything else that we haven't discussed already.
Nora's here. Let's ask Nora. You sort of came to an agreement on that old footnote, which was the whole line of all the FMUODs. And we're saying, oh, it was really meant for FMUOD 1. Should we just move it so it just is FMUOD? Or are there other problems?
It wasn't meant for FMUOD
FMUOD 1.
There was a need to clarify for a property There was a property in FMUOD1 that required a clarification, and that's what led to the footnote. The footnote was never intended to apply to FMUOD1. It was intended to express the way the planning board reviews every application it receives. So that is has always been the planning board's standard practice, not just in FMUOD, but in every other development it reviews. It's been the standard practice to consider applications that involve properties that are contiguous or effectively contiguous. So that footnote was put in at the request of Caruth Capital in a settlement agreement so that they could be sure that that's what would happen if the planning board treated their property. But it was never intended to just apply to FMUOD1.
And that was in one, though.
The Caruth Capital property was in one. There was no footnote prior to that settlement agreement because it was just the way the planning board did it, and they didn't feel there was any need for a footnote. It was just their common practice.
Yeah, my review of the history of that speaks otherwise.
Well,
What are we,
that's the way it has worked. I can show you many applications throughout the years. That's how it's always
I got
worked.
a little confused now. I'm like, what's the end purpose that we want to accomplish on this one? Like, so we're talking about, I think it was the not combining parcels, and yet we don't want to.
streets.
Well, we want to cross, yeah, but again, but the F in FMUOD is flexibility. We need that flexibility or we'll start eliminating it.
No, the flexibility is for the type of building. It's an intentional word
Well,
within.
no, everything in this chart here is supposed to be somewhat flexible to allow different kinds of projects and let the planning board decide whether that flexibility is within reason or just goes beyond what we're looking for. The whole idea is allow flexibility, see what happens, and then the planning board can always say no. And we didn't say no for the 3-story building because we specifically asked, why can't you put a second story above the post office? And the building was just not built to do that.
But I would say, in your response to see what happens, what almost happened at the last town meeting was that residents almost voted to remove residences from FMUOD 6 and 7. They almost reached that 66% threshold to remove that within the bylaw.
And the question is, was that the right thing to do? I mean, we're trying to promote reasonable housing within the town for different kinds of people. And some people may not agree with that. But we have a need for housing, and you know.
Well, they're
We have a need for economic development in the
Yeah, I
city.
agree.
And we
I
have,
agree.
we also have that, and we can get both of them together. We can get that housing and the commercial all in the same building, and it just goes back to a natural way, the way things used to be.
But we're still 20% vacant over at University, and those apartments over there.
No,
No, that
No,
number
we
came way up at the
yeah,
last.
we
the
had
last
that
report.
confusion was,
I thought
what are
they
they,
were
what are
90.
they counting? Yeah,
Was
Is it 90 now?
yeah.
I thought they
I
were
thought it was
really up
80 or.
It's closer to 80. It's not 90.
there. Okay.
What I'm saying
No,
is
no,
that
you're
you
saying 80% in just the, overall, it's in like 90, in just the
The non-affordable.
affordable ones, it may be 80.
Okay.
Well, what happens?
We haven't gone a report on that lately, have we?
Well, we did just a
You
few
did the
years
last,
ago.
the last
Oh,
meeting.
The last one, okay.
So what happens if somebody submits a special permit application, and it's like half an acre? Or they say, the project consists of the old KSI printing building and Hogan Tire. Like, what happens those are kind of extreme, but I guess the point is we can grant waivers and things, but how does it get, what's the threshold? Like, who decides that?
If I can just address that, first of all, you could not have KS Printing and Hogan Tire because they have to be contiguous or effectively contiguous. Effectively contiguous means they're only divided by a road or a railroad right-of-way. They have to otherwise be touching if that's not there. So you could have diagonal properties, diagonally across the street, or absolutely directly across the street, but you could not have properties on other ends. So in an example like that, the application would be rejected by the town planner. An application where it was, say, K&S and Dunkin' Donuts, and together they were less than 40,000 square feet, the application would come to the planning board to determine whether it wanted to waive the 40,000 square foot minimum. And that would be the first item on the board's agenda. They would not take up the application for formal review until making a decision on the waiver request.
So what does this footnote do for us then if it prevents combining? If we're saying to not allow that or to only allow it in one, then, but we can still consider properties. I guess I'm just like, what's the point?
No, we want to do it the other way around. We want to have it allow parcels, contiguous parcels, to be considered by the planning board, and then we have the ability to say no if it's inappropriate. But if we just took away that footnote from everything else, then all these things would automatically be eliminated.
Can I just go back to when we first established flexible multiple use overlay district zoning? It'll help you understand this. Steve was on the committee back then. The application or the project area that first came up that allowed us to create this district was Southwest Park. Southwest Park is a series of 8 or 9 different lots, and there was one property owner who purchased one after the other, and at one point owned all of those 8 or 9 lots, and came in to talk to us about what their options were for redeveloping that property. We created the FMUOD district to allow a flexible manner of allowing them to propose whatever it is they want to do and allow the board to consider it. That's a case where there are 8 or 9 properties divided by a road that goes down the center of it. 4 on one side, 5 on the other side. The idea was to let the planning board review an application and just decide if it made sense or not. In that case, the property owner eventually decided to sell off the individual properties, and it never came back for an FMUOD application. But that was the impetus for starting this section of the zoning bylaw. When we were putting it together, we said, well, there are other places in town where this would make perfect sense. Glacier Everett was one where we wanted to see all the properties. Now many of them are part of Prime, but there are other properties that are back behind there. Wilson Way, Frugal Fanny's, there are several properties. We were hoping to try and get them all together. Again, properties divided by a street. Allied Drive was another area we decided would be a great flexible multiple-use overlay district. Properties divided by a street. Wall streets, same thing. Every zone that we established had properties divided by a street. And the intention was that the planning board would treat it as it treated every other site plan review that it had ever reviewed, and allowed properties to be combined even if they were across the street. It was only when we had the settlement issue that had nothing to do with an FMUOD district. It was a settlement of a lawsuit that came from Westwood station takings involving Caruth properties on University Avenue. And they didn't feel confident that the planning board would interpret an FMUOD application the same way it interpreted its site plan review. And for that reason, they asked for the footnote, and the planning board accepted it upon request and put it in, probably not thinking hard enough about, the planning board could have responded, that's not necessary, we don't need the footnote, that is our practice, and they could have left it alone. But the planning board decided to put it in, acquiesced to the request, and now we are, debating it. We debated it the last hearing.
You can take it out, though.
You can take it out,
Okay,
yes.
it's not part of any settlement that we signed off on that.
The settlement was that the town would take that to town meeting and ask town meeting to approve it. They took it to town meeting approved it, it's in there now. That doesn't tie your hands.
Okay.
You can take it back out. But I just want to make it clear that FMUOD is about flexibility. And part of that flexibility is allowing for the planning board to look at a property as a whole and determine if it makes sense. If a project doesn't look good to you, you can deny it. It's a discretional special
Still
permit.
the gatekeepers.
Right.
So it could kill
There is a problem there, though, and the problem is a lawsuit to the town. So if you keep it in the bylaws, yes, we're a gatekeeper. Let's say we don't like a project, we say no. It's easier for us to allow flexibility beyond that than to deal with litigation. Like with this type of a thing, you leave this in the bylaws, and somebody comes forward with with a plan that would go across streets. Since it's already in the bylaws, I think that opens us up.
I don't think we can do our job worrying about litigation. That's not our department.
No, I hear you there, but I'm just saying, it's, to Dave's point, we can allow more if we want to. And if you go back into the history of it, I feel that the footnote was applied across them in error. That was my review of the history of.
I recall that's what Nora said.
I don't think we're
all
gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna get anywhere with
Yeah.
the footnote. Like, I think that if there are issues that we want to, if we want to change the bylaws to reflect this idea that we should not be building taller buildings with many apartments, or we should balance it out somehow. That makes a lot of, that's explainable. But if we go back to this kind of, here's a footnote, here's not a footnote, it's just such a technicality.
The history of the footnotes.
It's not going to
Yeah,
go
I mean,
anywhere.
If you want to eliminate the footnote, I'm all for putting it in the wording somewhere.
Well, and if the footnote's like
It's
so.
not always good to put too many footnotes and too much substantive stuff in footnotes.
Footnote is supposed to just be guidance, right? It's
Yeah.
supposed to give people an idea of what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's
but
supposed to.
hang everything on that, I mean, have a lawsuit over, well, you should have considered this project, but you didn't
Yeah.
because of.
So you can't, you know.
Or you shouldn't have considered the project at all because it violates the footnote. Well, I don't think that's going to fly because we have the discretion to grant waivers. We have a lot of discretion.
Yeah, we have a lot of leeway either way.
Yeah. But if you
Very
take
difficult
things-
for a court to.
Yeah, but if you
us
take,
down
if you
on
take
something
this
like that.
out and, you know, for instance, you don't have that leeway to do that, for instance,
Right.
you know, the Southwest, what if he wanted to say, okay, I'm gonna have a central parking garage for everything? So that's on one side of the street, the buildings it serves is on the other. But if you didn't have that flexibility to do that, that would kill the whole project.
Right. Yeah, I agree with the flexibility. I mean, I agree with Steve. I understand what you're saying, but again, that's not our job. Our job is to be the gatekeepers.
No, I hear
for
you,
these
I hear
things.
you. But I mean, in the most recent approval of a multi-use building, I felt that planning board gave everything to the project. You couldn't have gotten another square foot into the building that they put based on the setbacks.
The Washington
So,
Street one?
exactly.
Oh,
So there.
I mean, I think you need to look at what that looked like when they first came to us.
Yeah, but it
and
wasn't.
What it ended
But
up,
but that
cut back
extended
quite a bit.
into the setbacks, the restricted setbacks. So, what I'm saying is that I know that it does come down to discretion of the board, but in some cases, I think that it's good to have some restrictions set up. Because I'm all in for developing business and allowing for a buildable, a welcoming place for businesses. But I think that we can also be a little bit conscientious, considering that these zones are so big.
Let me make a suggestion here. We had a amendment at the town meeting that planning board was going to offer, right? Or we did offer, and then
Right.
it failed and everything. But you know, we had something. If we want to bring that back to the next meeting, discuss that, that might be the basis of something to go forward. I don't.
It didn't fail. It was rejected by the other side.
Well,
It was an
I don't
amendment that
remember.
didn't
It was
pass.
an amendment, they rejected.
It didn't pass, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I don't think, what do we have here on the, we're trying to come up with things that are potential town meeting articles. We've gone through a series of things, and now we've got kind of an idea of, there's a footnote, there's maybe something else. But how can we kind of pull this back to here's what we really want to do? Is there something actionable here or not?
I mean, I think this gives us the flexibility we need, and should we be eliminating flexibility just because some people are really nervous about what might turn out, but at the same time, we would end up getting a lot of projects eliminated right off the bat before we even look at them.
Right, we
simply
box
because-
ourselves in.
Maybe your concern isn't so much the dimensional standard section of the ordinance as it is the performance and design standards. So there's two sections of that bylaw. The first part lays out the guidelines that you should look at for the minimum standards or the minimum setback requirements and lot size and whether you can combine properties or not, dimensional requirements, that you have the ability to waive or not waive. But then later on in that section, there are performance and design criteria that are narrative, that explain what it is you think is a good idea and what it is you don't want to see. If there's something you don't feel that the bylaw is doing appropriately, something that it's not capturing, that it doesn't give planning board members the guidance you'd like it to give, then look at those performance and design standards and see if you would like to add any narrative language to that would be a way of guiding the planning board to make the decisions that you feel the board should make.
I think it's something that we need to go home and chew over ourselves until the next meeting and get a little more.
But is there time? Yeah, I agree with him. Just what's the timeline
Abby,
for?
we have to have
I
something.
think selectmen are at the 11th, they're reviewing.
Right.
But do we have to put it in the fall? I mean,
Yeah, I
we
think
got the
right.
spring
Yeah, I
coming.
think-
Right. I recommend leaving the footnote the way it is, as of right now.
Do we want to put any placeholder in or something so I don't think we have any consensus here tonight to like write up something. But if we thought about it and came back to the next meeting.
What would be the
maybe-
deadline for a placeholder?
Tomorrow we send the placeholders to the Board of Selectmen for their upcoming
Tomorrow's the
meeting.
deadline.
But it's a summary, it's not the exact language, it's
Right,
a
I
quick summary. But then we have to write the legal ad, really. We send it to newspaper this
So
week.
we
So it has
have-
to be enough that initial language for the public hearing notice will go in this week.
So in addition to the things you already talked about, we had this idea of a cap. What was our consensus on that? Like an idea of supporting some kind of a numerical cap on the number of apartments in town, right? Was that something?
Within
Right.
each FMUOD, within specific. Because University Station, I consider that a different.
I mean,
different-
is it like a per acre density cap per project?
So we're still working through it. I don't think that's what it would be. I think it would be, we have 4 FMUOD districts that allow mixed-use development. We have the FMUOD 1 on University Avenue. We have Glacier Everett. We have FMUOD 6, Washington Street, and FMUOD 7, High Street. I think what we're looking at right now is putting a numerical cap in each of those 4 districts. So a certain number of maximum units that would be permitted in FMUOD 1, FMUOD 3, FMUOD 6, and FMUOD 7. They'd be independent of each other, and they would be based on both what is possible in those districts and what is desirable.
So do we need to, it sounds like Board of Selectmen are taking a lead on that, right?
yeah.
They're discussing it.
Yeah, I think that becomes then a first come, first serve. People who early on get the number of units in and reach the cap, and then you're saying, even though it's allowed in this district, you can't do it anymore simply because that artificial cap has been reached.
So we're looking at it a lot like the UAMUD district, so the University Station Overlay District has a cap. There was the first phase, and then there was the second phase, and the second phase, it's been clear from the day that bylaw was passed that can be no more than a total of 650 residential units at University Station.
That's
So
also-
it doesn't matter where they go, once they hit that cap, they're done.
But that's all, we had a well-defined area with a single developer, which is a lot different from.
Well, we
Applying
did,
to the
it's
zoning
a
district.
well-defined area, as are all of the FMUOD districts. They're all well-defined, delineated areas. In this case, University Station was at the beginning owned by one developer, but pieces have been sold over time to different users. And if there's another residential phase, I think the last time New England Development was here, when they were talking about Brigham and Women's, which was a sold property to another entity. New England Development is not developing Brigham and Women's. They're doing that themselves. They talked about selling off a portion of it to develop a condo project, and we expect an application to come in shortly on that. It will be sold, just like the Hanover apartments were sold to a different developer. So one developer amassed the property, and put it up for development, but they have partners, a lot like we talked
Yeah,
about
but that's
Southwest Park was originally one owner, and it could have been developed in its entirety. Instead, it was developed in little pieces.
Say you put on a cap on the number of residential, single-family residential houses in the town. That means someone could buy an undeveloped piece of property and could not build their home on it simply because the cap had already been reached through the rest of the town. And so therefore, you are restricting proper use of their property, which they would have had if that artificial cap had not been attached.
But here's the difference. You're talking about a residential zone where residential use is the only permitted use. What we're talking about in FMUOD are commercial districts where we're allowing residential uses in those districts. That's not the underlying zoning. They are commercial districts. Residential is only allowed by discretionary special permit when it's beneficial to the town. You have the right to limit the number of units.
Yeah, how far has the conversation gone with the selectmen?
We've discussed it in concept. I expect to discuss it again on Monday night.
Yeah, because I'd be for that. And the other thing, too, is that from what I hear from residents, is they're always concerned about what next. And in this type of situation, in these, as far as the multi-use, it's like, okay, well, then they start looking at vacant buildings, and then they start wondering what commercial properties are going to be combined across lots, and where does it end, and what is the maximum? And what most residents are concerned about is
what's the cap?
We've all lived in apartments where I like apartments. I've lived in many apartments, but at a certain point, I believe that it does change the character. So I would be in favor of that. I'd be looking forward to the.
It adds predictability too. I think we heard people imagining
exactly
600, 700, 800 apartments in Islington. It can't happen, but if we put a cap in the bylaw, it'll be clear to everyone that can't happen.
And I think my personal opinion, it's a political decision. Like it's definitely something that do we, the planning board, want to be setting these caps on ourselves and stuff, or do we want to? Or is it something that's coming from the town saying, look, we want to put a cap in this, it shouldn't be greater than 100? I think it's
the way the fee is, we're going to put on a cap.
So I think that's properly a political thing for.
But it's more than that though, Dave, because even in Walpole, they just had I believe it's a 400 unit building going in the center of the town.
Yeah, I think there'd be a
so
lot
that's
of
that.
support for
I mean,
making
people
like that from happening.
It's a big deal.
So I don't see us needing to reserve a spot. It sounds like it's like the selectmen are going to consider it or something, and we don't have.
I hear what you're saying.
You know, that's
exactly. I feel that's something. If we don't hit the mark in the fall. If we feel the need, we can come back in the spring.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Let's see. The other issue we had was in talking about the footnote and the dimensional, sort of the idea of the 3 and the 1, 2-story buildings. I mean, is there something in that we want to propose?
Is like a height restriction?
No, again,
I'm thinking of, we've
and,
got
and
kind of.
again, we've got all this flexibility, and then you're just restricting the flexibility, and when what are you achieving?
Yeah, it's like you're trying to save the town from the board. The town has to trust the board.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we do have the opportunity when somebody proposes to build a 3-story parking garage on one side of the street and an apartment complex on the other, it's we can vote that down.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that wouldn't actually fit, but still, it's the idea.
That could happen, but but we have certainly the flexibility to turn that down. And again, we could look through all these pages of the various other standards and see if there's something.
Yeah, but I don't think that hits the mark, to be honest with you. Those other items, I think for it seems it's the combination of lots across streets. It's the height restriction that came up during even FinCom. There were members of that board that were concerned about the height, where you have the height variation, like the 1 versus the 3, the density.
So right, but you just speak to basically everything that we can control.
No, it's true. It's true.
You know, that's the problem.
Yeah.
When we start controlling that, developers are gonna walk away, and we're left with what we've had for the last 60 years.
No, I don't think that they'll walk away. I mean,
There's gonna come a point where it's not feasible for them to do it, and they're gonna walk away. And we're gonna be left with what we've had for the last 60 years.
yeah, but
Center
that
of
was
towns
because
generate no taxes.
that wasn't the reason for it, though. I mean, we're talking about, like, Maglietta was the owner before. He wasn't going anywhere. Some of those vacant buildings on Washington Street, some of those are held up in courts amongst families, so it's not that clear. But I mean, we want to be business friendly, yes, but I think it would be, let's consider in the future. It doesn't seem like we're going to get anywhere tonight on some of this, but I think there were parameters that, I mean, this board was willing to go 50%, to go, an amendment was brought to
Again,
the
it was
town.
better than losing all out.
No, I hear
And
you.
that was
I hear
rejected by
you.
the other side.
I hear you.
Yeah, I think we should just table this to the next meeting.
I agree, yeah.
All right, let's, the next item on the agenda is review of upcoming ZBA applications.
Right, I don't know if anyone had a chance to review. There are several applications on for their next meeting on the September 20th. I had prepared some draft comments. Really, the only commercial property was the solar at Eversource. So basically, the memo says that you'll be reviewing it the night before, then forwarding comments the next day to the zoning board. It comes to you for site plan review, and it goes to the ZBA as a special permit for the ground-mounted solar.
I didn't see a, did they provide a plan with that, or is that just more narrative?
They had a lot of documents, and it's in your packet tonight. They have some supplemental. So I will get you the electronic, not yet. After tonight's meeting, you'll get the electronic copies, but
So,
We get some.
here's some
so
plans
this
and
one, they're gonna
visuals.
appear before us for
They'll-
review, but that's gonna be before the ZBA?
The following
Yeah.
evening, yeah.
Yeah, we should probably do that the other way around, you would think.
Well, the reason it's coming to you first is you have to approve the layout, subject to ZBA approving the use. If ZBA approves it, otherwise, they see the plans, they see the layout plans, and if they approve the use according to a specific plan, and then you see it and you change the layout, then it's got to go back to ZBA for another
They're
review.
approving the concept to allow.
But ZBA applications are not concepts. They're letter of the law, exact plans.
Yeah, but.
So that's why it has to come to you first, so you can define the parameters. If you feel that there's something that needs further work, you can ask the ZBA to continue it. But if the ZBA reviews it first, and then it comes to you for site plan review, and you change things, then they're going back to the ZBA for a modification.
So that's the comments for this one, is that you would hear.
So all these other ZBA things
Are all
pretty standard.
residential. There was a couple that, I think there was at least one that, or two that are, one of them, or a couple of them are in response to recent zoning changes. We have a new, an accessory apartment proposed for Porter Street, and then also Pond Street is, they've applied for a special permit trying to stay in the rear setback, but within that 4-foot limitation that was changed the last time. So I noted in there, if they're more than the 4 feet, then that's when it becomes the variance for a non-conforming structure.
So sunroom,
Sunroom, yeah, so,
sort of like a porch.
yeah, so the zoning board has to make a positive determination that that's, what is the exact words? Positive finding that the proposed design element is de minimis in nature and improves aesthetic quality of the property. It's for a sunroom.
I don't think it's,
It's,
I guess that's up to the ZBA, right? These are
Yeah.
our comments.
yeah.
Oh, so we don't know whether it extends more than 4 feet or not.
They showed it exactly, they do, they showed it exactly at 4 feet.
And then if they have a positive opinion, then it comes to us as a variance.
No, it would be them.
So our
It's
wording
gonna
is
be-
no further than 4 feet. So that means
Yes.
4 feet is okay.
Yes, so that's why they applied for a special permit.
Well,
If they don't make
Okay.
that positive
So just- we
finding,
just- so we agree then.
it's a variance with
With
the
this
zoning
special
board.
permit.
But it improves the aesthetic quality of the property. Footnote, construction of
Oh, yeah.
overhang porch, portico,
Yeah.
a similar decorative feature which extends no further into, expanding the living area of the home, to me, seems more than de minimis. But
Yeah.
maybe it
Well,
improves the aesthetic.
Porch is not a living area, but.
Well, it says it's a
Enclosed.
sunroom.
Oh, it is a sunroom?
Right,
It's,
they're proposing a
is it
sunroom.
Is it
think
all
that's a
seasonal?
TV.
Is it all seasonal
What's that
sunroom?
one?
I don't know if they, I
that's
don't
what
think
we're
they
gonna
showed
try
all that
for.
much, yeah. So it,
No, that doesn't, well, then it's up to them to decide is that a porch or not. That's what the ZBA should decide.
And it really, it's all in their court, right? Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
the bylaw has been
It's written
adopted,
and
and it's up to them to
They can
figure
decide
it out.
4 feet, not 4 feet, porch or not porch.
yes, that's right.
Do we need to add that language, or are they all set with that?
I added the exact, in my comments, had the exact language from the zoning bylaw that they have to make that determination.
Okay.
Let's see, are we ready to move on to other
Yeah.
business such as the?
Well,
If anyone-
what you wrote here, you didn't mention the fact that is a sunroom
Okay.
really a porch or is it just actually.
Yeah, that's what I was
something-
wondering,
Okay.
yeah, if we need to spell
that's-
that
we
out.
need to add- Yes,
Um,
we should.
Yeah, is it a,
Absolutely.
because they
Okay.
might miss that question.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good
What
question.
are we finding, that it is?
They need
So
to-
we
No,
could
they
ask
need
the
to-
question.
They first have to determine, is this porch really a porch or is it an
Yes.
addition to the house?
Right.
If it's an all year round sunroom,
Right.
it's.
It's a four-season porch?
Yes, the porch is it really a porch or is it really an
Right.
extension of the house?
But that's
As
for
we-
their
as When we
determination.
said porch, we meant
Okay.
porch.
Right.
Not something that's, you can live in year round.
Yes.
Okay, I'll add that.
And then the accessory apartment, what's the details on that? So
They
they.
provided some plans, so that's a special permit with the zoning board. So my comments are that they need to review their design criteria. It was a little hard to read their
Okay, so this is
plans.
the
It was
basis we are
very
looking at the plans.
light.
That's good. Good, yeah, those are good comments for that.
Is 46 Washington Street, is that the old house?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's been continued for,
I was
A
looking, but
while.
I couldn't find the, this is the house in the barn.
yes.
What street was it down?
It's.
Next to Loring.
Yes, that's right, between Loring and Low. We got the application a while ago. It has been continued. So for other items, what did we have? Oh, you may have seen, so Dedham let us know that the property on the corner of Washington Street and the Gay Street extension, so right on the town line. They haven't finalized the public hearing meeting date. It might be the end of September, so I'll keep you posted. They haven't scheduled that yet. It could possibly be September 28th. But they have reviewing or will be reviewing a mixed-use proposal for 3-story mixed-use building with first floor commercial and I think it was 28 apartments. And about 40, I think it was 43 parking spaces.
So are the plans available yet?
Yes, or yes, the ones
Did
that
you
they
send
sent
them?
me.
They're on-
I put them in
Oh, they're on-
in
they're on
the
list for
packet.
the-
Yeah.
So I saw that they have been discussing this since January, I guess, the Dedham Planning Board, but there's no, unlike our website where we have everything.
Your website is excellent.
Everything,
Oh, thank
all
you.
of the
Yeah.
applications
And
and things that have been
Yeah.
approved. I couldn't find anything on their site, so I was wondering if
No
this
meeting minutes.
are the materials they sent us, are those like, have they been publicly released, or do we not want to release them because of, it's previous?
Yeah, they sent it to me because, I was talking to them, and they had let me know that they came to the planning board, I think, as a preliminary meeting before in the spring. So I think they filed, but it's still under review and hasn't gone to the full, I don't know if it's gone to the board yet. I mean, this hearing has not been scheduled.
I know a lot of my neighbors are curious about it, and whether or not there's any information that they're just curious because they're obviously not Dedham residents. But
Right, then they should contact Dedham to find out more. I was going to check back with them on when the actual, we get a notice when a public hearing has been scheduled, and we have not received that yet.
So I don't see any problem with if they've scheduled a public hearing on it, those are the plans.
Right.
That you couldn't get it on our website in addition.
Well, I'd want to check with them because the public hearing, I haven't received the notice of the public hearing yet. I've just talked to them.
We can talk about them. I mean, we've got I think you already said pretty much the basics.
Yeah, exactly. 28 unit, 3-story. Partial underground, not partial, under a canopy parking.
Right, it was like ground level with some the building over.
What are they looking for?
And I think that's
us?
also.
What kind of feedback are they interested in? Or is it
I
more
got
of
just
a
comments. I mean, we
courtesy?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we do for any public hearings, we send notices to all the other surrounding towns that abut us. So I haven't received that yet, but I know I had heard about it, and I asked them, and they sent me this and said a public hearing has not yet been scheduled, but it will be soon.
Got it, okay. Yeah.
It's a state requirement that
Yeah.
whenever you have any approval under a zoning act, the applicant has to notify, or through the town, has to notify all abutting towns, even if you're nowhere near it. So for every application we have, we notify Needham, because we touch them, Dover, it might not have anything to do with them, Walpole, Dedham, Norwood, Canton, everyone gets notified.
And the notification is for what kind of projects?
Anything that's a special permit.
Yeah.
Oh, a special.
Interesting.
Or a variance as well.
Yeah.
Special permit or variance, not site plan review.
Right.
Well, good for you for keeping your
So-
eye on bringing it to us, sharing. But they're not interested in feedback.
Well,
Anyone
we
can
can.
give that feedback.
Yep.
But no, what I mean is they didn't solicit, they weren't we can certainly let them know what we think about anything, but they're,
Right.
they
Well,
didn't specifically say that.
Well, I was just talking to some of the staff in Dedham, and we were talking about what's going on in Westwood, and they let me know that this was coming up for them.
Well, where does the traffic end? Does it go out into that side street next to?
John Gay.
Right. Okay. We should look at
Yeah.
that.
So
I
I mean
forget.
that
Okay.
intersection is in Westwood, and the traffic flows out into it. In fact, I was down there looking for that other place, and the traffic coming out from behind that other building is rather strange the way that does that.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
got to the end of the street and has a traffic conflict that I wasn't expecting.
I mean, Gay Street Extension, is that in
Yeah, it's right
Westwood?
there.
Right. So
Yeah.
It's
It's
not-
right.
nowhere near as big
Oh,
as
it's
the
not working.
Norwood stuff, but it's a similar issue. There's a new thing that's right on the border. So like what I mean is like the Norwood, the upland woods and all that kind of stuff was of great interest to people because of the impact it would have.
Hogan Tires.
Yeah.
right there,
Yeah, sorry, down at the end of the building, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I know. All this stuff comes up the sharp corner.
Got it. Yeah.
It kind of like, so it is.
So
Well, if
I
you
guess
want to
maybe
review it a little bit
comments
more,
after we get
and
more
we,
information.
right, and we can review it again. Maybe by the next meeting, we'll know when their public hearing is.
And who manages that light at the bottom of Gay Street? Do we?
That's our light,
Yeah,
that's the town.
that
That's our
one,
light,
yeah. Because then we had the whole discussion at Hogan Tire with the
Yeah, if we had to change
utility
the
pole,
timing
too.
of it, that's Westwood's responsibility.
Yeah, it's a big
Yeah.
deal in the morning, people coming down there to turn left and back
Totally,
to
yeah.
Hanlon practically. And I actually walk by there every day now, so I would love to see a sidewalk
In front of that gas station instead of having to go through the weeds.
Absolutely. Oh, see, that's why when I was going down Wall Street.
That's right.
Wall Street. I didn't look in the middle.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Abby.
All right. Okay, so stay tuned. More is coming.
Can you let us know if it will be at that September 28th hearing?
Yes. Yep. I'll let you know.
Cool.
I'll check in with them.
Yeah, again, I found that their website didn't give a whole lot of information. It had spots where things should be, but they weren't there to, just restricted.
So we do have a lot on our website.
We do.
And, it is, it's good to sometimes take a look at, I don't want to badmouth any other towns, but if you do compare to other towns, we have a ton more detailed information. Practically every document that's come through this committee is up there on the list of planning board applications and all. And if you go to other towns, it's very hard to find things like that, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So, is there any other? We had the ZBA applications. We've had the discussed datum. So now we have signing decisions, committee reports, other topics. Abby, what else do we have?
Let's see. Oh, Westwood Day,
Westwood Day.
September 23rd. Last time you talked about not having a table, but we have little name badges that we put. Did we put them in the packet? If you wanted, okay. Well, we have some little name badges if you wanted to wear those, and then they're always looking for volunteers throughout the day at different, starting early in the morning with
So
the road race.
Do they need volunteers for like the bike helmet giveaway? Someone setting up times for that, or how?
I missed the last.
That was run privately, isn't it?
The Pedestrian and Bike Safety Committee.
So if you want to come help, usually that goes in a couple hours.
So this is
between
separate from
10
the
and 12.
insurance company that gives out bike helmets.
Well, it's done as part of the pedestrian bicycle committee.
Okay.
That's
and
great.
It's the legal firm that
Yes.
provides the helmets. So, yeah, check by between 10 and 12 just to see if things are under control, if they need any help.
Okay.
There's also the 5K race, if anyone would like to participate or volunteer to help with that.
You're asking me to get in shape for this thing. I don't know if it's possible.
The good thing about the 5K is it's early, so you can, you can show up early. And
I can ride a bike and use one of the helmets.
So we're not going to have a table or anything? Or?
No.
No, I think, if that's
So
okay, unless you really want to, but I think last time you talked about kind of volunteering, getting out and talking to people.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than a table.
But where will you be? Where will you be doing?
Same deal.
Volunteering.
Yeah.
I think it's good, but I think people need to be signed up for something, because it's hard to, like, the good thing about when we did the ped bike stuff was getting people at certain times, sorry, somebody's gonna be there from 11 to 12, and then you kind of fill out.
The Recreation Department has a sign-up sheet. Abby can email you
Right.
the sign-up sheet. It's an electronic sign-up sheet, and it
Yeah,
has
you should.
very
Yeah.
specific times for parking, help, for setup, for cleanup, for food court, cleaning the tables. There's a million jobs, and you can sign up for any one of them.
That's great.
Yeah, so I can send that again, but it's, usually I think
So
2-hour
This
increments.
is the first time we haven't had a specific
Table.
table.
Yes.
Do you want a table, Steve?
I'm not sure. We can see how it goes, but our tables was very successful previous years. We had a lot of.
Was it?
Didn't we have a lot of people asking questions and finding out things?
The
we
last,
had
I was
pictures
at the
of-
last 2 years. 2 years ago was when we had the bad weather, so the little displays that we had didn't hold up very well. And then last year was,
Windy.
it was windy too, so I kind of just had some printouts and some renderings of projects on 1 or 2 poster
Yeah,
boards,
but
but it's
we
really
got a
hard
lot-
to
we got a
stay
lot
up.
of
But you did talk to
traffic
people?
over there.
Okay.
We
And
definitely did.
and you all took turns about an hour or so at the table.
Yes.
I was thinking if there must be do the selectmen have a table? Like, is there another table for the town?
They do
I-
something special over on the stage, over.
We used to have a.
They
table.
used to, yeah. So we used to have a little mini town hall area where
Yeah,
a lot of
that's what I
different
would- yeah.
departments and boards and
Yeah.
committees. But the Recreation Department has encouraged everyone to help in other areas with the what we had sent out. That's where they really needed
So
the
we're
help.
being
So-
discouraged from that.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think thus
That
far,
works for
only
me.
the pedestrian bike safety might be, as far as I know, when I checked in last week, I think they were the only committee that was having a table.
We
As-
will
and
have
this-
a table, and we'll have a new banner. to put
Yep,
up
the new
on it.
banner and-
Very slick.
Yep.
So anyone can stop by there and help out.
That's great.
But I'll send that link out again too, because
So do we have any decisions to sign or?
oh
About some
no,
minutes.
no decisions, but there are minutes from your last meeting, August 22nd, and Steve gave me one edit. Just remove the word "can" that was a typo.
Steve, you want to move to
So
approve?
everyone read it? Everyone check them out?
I did, but I didn't catch any
I didn't
errors.
Oh, yeah, well, no, as long as,
Okay.
yeah, all right. So I move we approve the minutes of August 22nd.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. All right,
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second the motion to adjourn.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.